Hi everybody, Kev here. Welcome to the Inspired Healing Podcast. And today we conclude the Amelia Earhart story. And today is all about what happened to Amelia Earhart. Now, her disappearance really has remained a source of great fascination and controversy over the years. And it's over 80 years since she disappeared. It was on the morning of July 2, 1937. Amelia and her navigator, Fred Noonan, took off from Lae over in New Guinea. It was one of the last legs in their historic attempt to circumnavigate the globe. Now, their next destination was Howland Island in the central Pacific Ocean, which is around about 2,500 miles away. US Coast Guard cutter, which is called the Itasca, and that was waiting there to guide Amelia in for a landing on the tiny uninhabited coral atoll. But they never arrived on Howland Island. They were battling overcast skies, they had a faulty radio transmissions and a rapidly diminishing fuel supply in her twin-engine Lockheed Electra aeroplane. Now, she and Noonan lost contact with the Itasca somewhere over the Pacific, and despite a massive search and rescue operation, which is unprecedented in scale, it included ships and planes from the US Navy and the Coast Guard, and they scoured some 250,000 square miles of ocean, but they never found them. Now, in the official report at the time, the Navy concluded that Earhart and Noonan had run out of fuel, crashed into the Pacific and drowned. And a court order declared Earhart legally dead in January 1939, 18 months after she disappeared. And there is some thought that the reason for that, and this is where history can become a little bit blurred, but there's lots of conspiracy theories and this and that, but her husband at the time wanted to arrange or declare her legally dead because he wanted to get married again. So that's some interesting history there, some interesting gossip maybe. But apparently, from all the reports, everything that I've read, he very much lived on her celebrity. He was very much around her because she was famous. And the reports are not good about her husband. But again, this is history, and history can be distorted. So from the beginning, debate has really raged over what actually happened on July the 2nd, 1937, and in the time after that. Now, the first theory is called the castaway theory. And in her last radio transmission made at 8:43 a.m. local time on the morning she disappeared, she reported flying on the line 157337, running north and south. And that is a set of directional coordinates that describe a line running through Howland Island. Now, in 1989, there was an organisation that launched its first expedition to Nikomororo, which is a remote Pacific atoll, and I've got a number of birds screeching at the moment, so they're out there flying and screeching, which is probably quite appropriate, being we're talking about one of the greatest aviators the world has ever seen. I've got some birds floating around and squeaking and squalling. Now, Nikomororo, it's a very hard name to say, Nikomororo, a remote Pacific atoll that is part of the Republic of Kiribati, is where this particular group, known as the Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, or TIGHAR, as they're known, and its director, Richard Gillespie, believed that when Earhart and Noonan couldn't find Howland Island, they continued south along the 157337 line, some 350 nautical miles, and made an emergency landing on Nikomororo, which was then called Gardner Island. And I'm going to call it Gardner Island from now on because it's easier to say than Nikomororo. According to this theory, they lived for a period of time as castaways on the tiny, uninhabited island and eventually died there. Now, US Navy planes flew over Gardner Island on July the 9th, 1937, so a week after they disappeared, and saw no sign of Earhart or Noonan or the plane. But they did report seeing signs of recent habitation, though no one had lived on the atoll since 1892. So interesting. And in 1940, British officials retrieved a partial human skeleton from a remote part of Gardner Island. A physician subsequently measured the bones and concluded they came from a man. Now, the bones themselves were later lost, if you can believe that. How do they lose those bones? But another group analysed their measurements in 1998 and claimed that in fact they most likely belonged to a woman of European ancestry, of around Earhart's height, which was 5'7" to 5'8". And in 2018, a forensic analysis of the bone measurements conducted by anthropologists from the University of Tennessee showed that the bones have more similarity to Earhart than to 99% of individuals in a large reference sample. So that's the first theory. And I just find it interesting that when the Navy planes flew over Gardner Island, they did report seeing signs of recent habitation, although no one had lived there since 1892. Now, the second theory is that they were taken prisoner by the Japanese. So when they failed to reach Howland Island, it's believed they were forced to land in the Japanese-held Marshall Islands. Now, according to this theory, the Japanese captured Earhart and Noonan and took them to the island of Saipan, some 1,450 miles south of Tokyo, where they tortured them as presumed spies for the US, and they later died in custody, possibly by execution. Now, since the 1960s, the Japanese capture theory has been fueled by accounts from Marshall Islanders who were living there at the time, saying there was an American lady pilot held in custody on Saipan in 1937, which they passed on to their friends and descendants. Now, some of the theory's advocates suggest that Earhart and Noonan were in fact US spies, and their around-the-world mission was a cover-up for efforts to fly over and observe Japanese fortifications in the Pacific. Now, at that time, more than 4 years before the Pearl Harbor attack, Japan was not yet the Americans' enemy in World War II. So some have suggested that Earhart didn't die on Saipan after her capture, but was released and repatriated to the US under an assumed name. In the 1970s, some proponents of this theory have argued that a New Jersey woman named Irene Bolam was in fact Earhart. Bolam herself vigorously denied these claims, calling them a poorly documented hoax, but they persisted even long after her death in 1982. So the mystery really does deepen, doesn't it? So since 1989, TIGHAR, that group, has made at least a dozen expeditions to Gardner Island, turning up artefacts ranging from pieces of metal, possibly aeroplane parts, to a broken jar, but no conclusive proof that Earhart's plane ever landed there. And amid the ongoing controversy spanning more than 80 years of debate among researchers and historians, the crash and sink theory remains the most widely accepted. But over 3 expeditions since 2002, the deep sea exploration company Nauticos has used sonar to scan the area off Howland Island near where Earhart's last radio message came from. Now that covers nearly 2,000 square nautical miles without finding a trace of the wreckage. Now, until that wreckage or some other definitive piece of evidence is found, the mystery surrounding Amelia and her final flight will likely continue. And it's an amazing, amazing story, and just the theories that come up. It's one of those enduring mysteries that we really do need some kind of evidence, and it makes you want to go out there and search yourself and just see what you can find out there, because it would be great to know just what happened to her. So that's the Amelia Earhart story. A fascinating story, fascinating lady who was really inspired a whole generation of females to go out there and not just find a job, but to go and find a meaning in life and go and have an impact on the world. And it's just a great story, and I love it. A big thanks to Amelia for living that beautiful life that she did. And also a big thanks to history.com for a lot of the information I've spoken about today. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed that little history of Amelia and her disappearance. Like I say, it's a fascinating story, and hopefully one day we will get to the bottom of it. Thanks for listening. I will see you tomorrow.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you did, please subscribe and leave a review. That really does help us. And also share it with your family and friends. That would be great. And please support my sponsor, Prostate Plus. Prostate Plus supplements really can help shrink your prostate. I use them myself to great effect. The links to Prostate Plus are down below in the show notes. Thanks for listening.